Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the CP Performance Podcast. First of all, thank you for coming back and listening to this episode. If you haven't already, go back to episode 2, listen to Ali Riley's interview, because this is what the synopsis for today will be on, so this will be a slightly shorter episode. But before we get started, just a quick message from our sponsor. Playa is a new smart football tracker designed to utilise GPS technology and give you personalised sports science advice. For more information, go to playersmartcoach.com. And to be in for a chance to win one of the Player Smart Football Trackers, join our mailing list and follow us on social media at CP Perform UK. So let's get started. So as I previously mentioned, this is going to be a synopsis episode, so we're going to take a look at a few of the key points from Ali Riley's interview and just discuss a little bit more about that. We're going to look into travelling and finding a home, as a elite athlete travelling around, and what it means to be doing that and how you can settle and make yourself comfortable. We're also going to look at the coaching approaches. So Ali Riley mentioned quite a few different coaching approaches, so we're going to look into that and a little bit about some of the theory and research behind that, and why certain styles at certain ages are important, and I'm going to give my opinion on quite a few bits and pieces of that, and the importance of relationship development between coaches and players, and also between coaches and other members of the staff and MDT. So, and then this will sort of lead on to next series where we're going to do a lot of discussion with multidisciplinary team members of staff. So I've got an array of guests lined up, including physios, doctors, other strength and conditioning coaches. I'm hoping to get a couple of researchers on as well, but again, all in and around female athletes and women's football. And the final theme we're going to look at in this synopsis is technology as well. So Ali did mention a few little bits of technology that she likes to use, and different approaches and the reasons why you need to be accountable and use those technologies. So I'll just delve into a little bit more of that and give you a bit of an idea of what we did at an elite level and what it can look like at a sub-elite level, and then also give potentially coaches an idea of other areas that they can go and explore and potentially bring into their game as well. So let's start briefly then with travelling and finding a home, making yourself comfortable in and around your environment. So a lot of people find this very, very difficult. And with scholarships to America becoming more readily available, young female footballers in this country are going to have these challenges to face. So I definitely think it's something that's worth trying to address or at least discuss. So the feeling of being homesick's very, very common, and anyone can get it. You look at situations where young males at the age of 16, 17, 18 have left home to go and join the armed forces. They are in a position where they've gone into a whole new environment, very, very stressful, very, very different. They will no longer have, the support and helping hand from their mum and dad at home. So that's very similar to what would happen if you took a scholarship in America. You'd have to grow up very, very quickly and learn how to fend for yourself and do things your own way. So how can you go about approaching this? How can you go about making ways to make sure that you find yourself at home when you're away from home? And obviously travelling in professional sport is very, very common. So, if you're going into professional sport, you will find yourself, especially football, travelling around the country or around the world to play, to compete, and to find clubs where you will be moving to and potentially moving your whole life to. So a couple of senior players gave some hints and tips to some of the younger players, such as making sure you build a strong supportive network around you that, again, back you on your decisions to go and do these things, to step away from home, to go abroad, to actually get out your comfort zone and help yourself develop. A couple of other simple tips were, take some things from home that remind you of home, but don't make you upset, obviously, things that give you good, fond memories. But personally, for me, the biggest piece of advice I would give anyone is remember that life and everything in and around you still continues to go on. So they will still be going to work, they will still be going and doing their jobs, they will still be doing their daily tasks. It's just you will be doing yours from another part of the world, and you only get one life, and it's a very short career. So you've got to take any opportunity you're given, whether it's taking a scholarship at Harvard University or whether it's going and playing in Australia in their leagues down there. If you're given an opportunity like that, it potentially only comes around once in a lifetime. So seize it, go and enjoy it, and do as much as you can to have as much fun as possible while you're there. So this now leads me on to looking at the second key theme from Ali's interview, and that's the coaching approaches. So Ali actually mentioned herself a couple of different approaches she's received over the years. So when you actually look into what these approaches actually are in the literature, you've got the autocratic approach, which is deemed as the slightly more bossy coach. Then you've actually got the democratic approach, which is believed to be someone who's a bit more of a guider. And then finally, again, the literature shows like there's a third sort of coaching approach, which is the laissez-faire, which is someone that's a very, very casual coach, stands right back and is a bit more of a minder to the squad. So from my personal experience, across my years of coaching, I've definitely used all three. I've found that as I've coached more and more and more, I've become more of the democratic and laissez-faire, stepping back, taking a look at things. But I believe that's maybe because I'm working with more senior athletes now. But what this doesn't mean is I'm not actually coaching. I've always got my eyes on the athlete and what they're doing, whether they're on the pitch. I've always got my eyes on the way they're moving, looking for any sort of movement compensations or weaknesses that we can help to improve on. But if I go back and actually think about how I used to coach when I was at Wasps Academy, when I was working with the under-15s boys, it was very, very much an autocratic approach. So as Ali mentioned, as a developing athlete, you actually need to be told, you need to be demonstrated to, you need to be sent down the pathway that gives you the best response and the best development at that point, because you're still developing. And then as you progress into more senior level as an athlete, you'll probably find that your coach can actually take a more democratic and educational approach with you. I know there's quite a lot of buzz around it at the moment to, try and teach as young as possible and try and learn as young as possible to have that freedom of development and learning. But I personally feel that if you don't have that guidance to get the response you want to get, especially in the gym, it's slightly different on the pitch, especially in the gym, then you might actually be slipping into a direction of poor movement patterns from the offset. Obviously, this is all very dependent on the individual, and your actual personal development as an athlete should be taken into consideration, from a holistic point of view by the coach. So there may be times where your coach actually has to take a more autocratic approach or a more democratic approach, depending on the situation. So it's not like things are set in stone. It's actually a developing, dynamic pathway, dynamic set of approaches that can continuously shift. But from a literature perspective, in 2017, Marcone, which I believe was his PhD thesis looking into coaching approaches and styles and motivation, it was actually shown that athletes that were better educated by their coach to think for themselves and to educate themselves as well actually had a massive positive impact on their own intrinsic motivation and performances. And another bit of research by Kim and Cruz in 2016 showed that the actual relationship building was the key. Being able to talk to each other, coach-athlete relationships, being able to ask questions, how, when, why, that was what actually developed a really good, stable, strong and progressive environment and athlete off the back of that. And finally, I found Bo Hansen did a blog post on the 4 disc styles, which I could probably do with reading a little bit more myself, so I'll go away and then probably bring that into another post in the future, another podcast in the future. But he talks about coaches being a dominance-based coach, an influence-based coach, or a steadiness or a conscientious. Some examples of this include, for the dominance, the coach having actually very, very limited time and only getting the vital bits of information out of there, so it's almost like a one-way bit of communication, so it's almost like an order, which again seems very autocratic. The steady approach was more time, actually being able to hold conversations one-to-one, and develop and build those relationships. The influencer was actually a coaching style that uses inspiration to provide motivation for the athlete, so to get them to think for themselves. And then finally, the conscientious coach would set up situations and challenges for the athletes to try and figure out themselves. They would get involved in helping them understand it, but try not to be dominant. And Bo Hansen's actually said that this is more of a common approach with more experienced athletes. So that just gives us sort of a brief insight into some of the coaching approaches and styles and preferences. And if you're actually interested in talking more about this to me, then find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at CPPerformUK. Drop me a message, let's have a chat about different approaches that may suit you. And if you feel like your coach is too hard on you or in a particular way, then again, drop me a line, find out why. I can have a little delve more into some of the research and make some suggestions and help you, and maybe have that conversation with one of your coaches. Or even if you're a developing coach yourself and you just want to have a chat about approaches of being that more holistic, laissez-faire kind of coach, where you're actually taking a step back and helping to educate the athlete instead of continuously dictate towards them. So I hope that's helped. So this leads into our final topic of the synopsis today. So we're going to look at the technology being used and what's available there at the elite and at the sub-elite level. So I'll start off by quickly just touching over the heart rate stuff. So heart rate's been a metric that's been measured in sports science since the dawn of sports science. It's actually becoming a little bit more reliable, but it's still not the most reliable source, because obviously the heart rate monitors, if they're wearing a chest strap, can be bouncing on and off, not always touching the skin, so that will flicker what's actually being read, especially when you're running around on the pitch. But there's more recently been the heart rate variability come out. So again, I don't know a huge amount personally about this. I need to do a little bit more of my own upskilling and education. But what I do know from conversations with individuals that have used this at the elite level is that it's a great tool for actually keeping an eye on full wellness of an athlete and an individual. So you may find that you're actually monitoring their heart rate every morning and keeping a big data bank of what it looks like, but if you suddenly see a variation and a spike in their resting heart rate in the morning, it could give an indication of a potential flu or virus that's coming up. So that's actually a really good place to start. So you can actually look at elitehrv.com. They do a free subscription on an app. Again, I'm not 100% sure how great it is, but it's worth a try just to give you some piece of information and a bit of informative detail about what's going on. If you're feeling a bit rubbish one morning when you wake up, then that might actually give you some objective data behind that. So then obviously you've got heart rate data from sources such as Fitbit or Polar. They're readily available in lots of places for everyone, really, quite reasonably priced. And a lot of the systems now that they use actually give you training zones and things to look at. What you've got to remember is you don't always want to be in the red training zone. You need to be letting your heart rate recover. You need to be doing the high end stuff as well as the low end stuff. So low intensity training is massively underutilized now. Everyone thinks that it's all about HIIT and it's all about that continuous hard work. Well, no. If you're an elite athlete, that low intensity training is so important. So you're either training to adapt or you're training to recover. You either train nice and high or you train nice and low. You don't want to be training continuously high, because all you're going to do is you're going to frazzle your central nervous system. You're going to be exhausted. You're not going to be able to recover, and your heart is not actually going to recover properly. So when you're actually thinking about how you want to train and how you're using the heart rate as a tool for monitoring, don't constantly think, I need to be up in the 90 odd percent. I need to be always up in the 90 odd percent of my max heart rate. Actually, no, you need to come back down, and you need to spend a fair amount of time, like sub 60%, 70%, letting that heart rate recover, letting your left ventricle in your heart actually fill with blood so that it can empty out, big, strong, powerful strokes, not just continuously hard strokes. But I'll go on to, conditioning in another podcast, definitely at some point. So again, keep an eye out for that one. So another useful tool that we actually used, which is becoming a lot more readily available, are the regular wellness apps. Morning monitoring, asking yourself questions like in and around how was your sleep quality, and how many hours did you get? How stressed do you feel today? Do you feel fatigued? Do you have soreness sites? Now these apps are great. It catches a data bank of longitudinal data for how you've been feeling and responding. What it doesn't do is it doesn't give you the full answer. As a coach, it gives you a snapshot first thing, and then it gives you that door to open to go and have a conversation, to make sure you're checking in with your athlete. If you see a trend of regular fatigue after a particular day of training, then you need to actually check in to make sure that they're starting to recover properly from that, because we used to have very different characteristics in certain players. So some players would find certain training sessions nice and easy, recover nice and quick, and others would struggle, depending on whether they was anaerobic or aerobic based athlete, were they a power strength athlete, or were they a endurance runner? Could they be a wing back that could cover like Ali could, 10, 12k without a worry, or were they a stronger, more central midfield who would actually need a little bit more time to adapt? So this is where those wellness apps come in. And now, coming away from the wellness, we're going to actually just quickly discuss some of the GPS stuff. So with regards to what you're actually trying to do with GPS, is you're trying to capture everything they're physically doing as best as you can, and you're looking at it as sort of an external stimulus. So you're going to be looking at several things really. Typically they look at total volume, total distance covered, high speed running, speed exposures, and accelerations and decelerations, normally above 3 meters per second for the both. So normally the high end accelerations and decelerations. So why might that be important? Well, when you're considering what physically is involved with total distance, you're actually looking at the overall volume that the legs have gone through in the session. And then when you start considering high speed running, you're actually looking at a protective dose there. So when you think about Tim Gabbett's research in and around acute chronic, there's a lot of debate now about its validity, but it actually gives you a nice little base to start looking at. How can we make sure we're not doing too much or too little to stay relatively fit and relatively injury free? And then finally you've got your acceleration and deceleration, which look at load placed upon the legs, how tired the legs are going to be after that, if you're going to induce any DOMs, and speed exposures as well, how capable the central nervous system is of producing power and speed to your top end, how quickly you can run. So that was a very, very quick sort of synopsis within a synopsis of how you can look at the GPS metrics. So we used Catapult, so that was a real extensive system, for an elite team, expensive as well, but a brilliant piece of kit. Did everything for us and made it possible for us to keep 91% training and playing availability through the whole season. And then they've used that technology to actually design Player, our series sponsor. They're actually an incredible piece of kit which actually looks at all the key physical performance stats, and it also gives you a heat map as well, and the ability to compare to not only your friends but also to compare your sessions to some of the pros, which is really, really cool when you're looking at how you can monitor your own training. Can you see if you're doing the similar things to what the elite athletes would be doing as well? And then obviously within that package you get the sports science and recovery advice, which is invaluable, monitoring and using statistics to actually benefit your training and improve your performance. And as I mentioned as well in the intro podcast, one of the reasons why I wanted Player to be our series sponsor was because they're designed by Catapult, and I know how reliable that system is, and it's used by over 2,500 teams globally, including Ajax, Real Madrid. And considering the extensive background and research from Catapult, the Player an extremely affordable piece of kit. £169 for one of their smart football fitness trackers is incredible. And luckily they've given me the opportunity to give one away for free in July 2019 and another one in August 2019. So if you want to be part of both of the draws, all you have to do is find me on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter at CP Perform UK, and select our sign up button, and then just put in your email and your first name, and you'll be placed into both those draws, and you'll get an email at the end of the month saying who won, and we'll set up getting that delivered to you. So then finally you're probably thinking, well, Joe, unless I win this piece of kit, how else can I start looking at bits and pieces that I can actually afford? Some of the technology out there is quite expensive. Okay, yeah, you're not wrong, but there are ways around it. There are things you can do. So if you've got a laptop and Excel, for instance, we can help you set up a really simple RPE, so rating of perceived exertion and session duration. So you times those together and it gives you a little arbitrary unit. You just collate that data from your sessions over time, and we can start looking at monitoring that to help you keep a balance so your training spikes aren't too high or too low. And I'd also be more than happy to send you a wellness database that I set up previously to help you to start getting a few things in place for yourself. So if you're interested in any of that, drop me a line on social media again at CP Perform UK. Also have a look in the bio, because then I've put a link in there to all my social media as well as our mailing list. But yeah, like, share, join us, come and join the community and have a chat with us. And I hope this synopsis has given you a little bit of an insight into some of the coaching approaches and stuff, and a few little bits of technology out there, you know. I've got lots more information to share and lots of good things coming out. So our next guest is actually Deanna Cooper. That will be coming out next Monday. That will be Monday the 8th of July 2019. So the whole point of this series was to, you know, get the players' perspectives on the things we've discussed today, keep the podcasts short and sweet, not too long, and actually then give me a chance separately to divulge some ideas and talk about some experiences. So hopefully that's come across, and I've helped inform you and make you think about either the way you do things as an athlete or your approach as a coach. So I just wanted to thank you again for listening. I want to encourage you to go and look at Ali's blog as well, you know, Girls with Balls, in the link of the previous episode. And again, sign up to our mailing list for your chance to win a Player Smart Football Fitness Tracker. Thank you.